I'm going to resume the recording. And I think my internet's more stable
really
because the boys aren't here right now. So I think it's just me. So I don't think we'll have any
Yay.
issues. On Monday, Yolanda, I got bumped out of my own class and for health and safety. It just cut me out of my own class. I was like,
you know what? It happened to me on Thursday, but I wasn't that upset because I needed to go catch a plane anyway. So I was like, I texted my TA and I'm like, hey, take over the class. I'm out.
Bye.
You know what? It happens. It happens.
It happens.
You know, Jody knows I'm usually such the overachiever, but I'm like, I can't, you guys, I can't. I'm too old to be partying. I mean, I was partying till like 4 a.m. Like, I'm way too old. Like, I just can't recover.
No, I agree. We can't recover.
Well, it was
not worth it.
No, it was like, so there'd be like an event, right? Like on my friend's family, like there was all these events, 4 events for 4 days. And then they'd be like, oh, there'd be an after party after the event. And there'd be the after party. I'm like, you guys, I'm not 20 anymore. I can't do this.
Yeah, I need jammies in a book. Like,
not a hangover.
For a wedding, right?
Yeah, it was a wedding. It was my girlfriend's wedding. You know, I was just so happy to see her finally find happiness. You know, you want to celebrate those moments with someone who's gone their whole life and thought, I'm not going to meet Mr. Right. So I really had to make the effort. And, you know, it was nice to not be in a situation. Like, it was great just to get away. You know?
Of course. Outside of your bubble makes a huge difference. Difference.
And then I brought my daughter, so we were able to have quality time. That was great. You know, that was good. We're all connecting today. Yay.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm telling you, the tech has been like, there's been a few issues where Canvas, and I think it's me, and then we'll get like this like global email that says something like, you know, network connectivity. I'm like, oh, that's not a big deal. Just, you know, for classes and whatnot. It's like, I think it's me some of the times, and then we'll all go back and look at the emails like, oh no, it's the system. Yikes. Or Zoom has grown so big so fast. I'm not surprised when there's
it throws us out sometimes, or it freezes, or you freeze, or the kids freeze. It's, you know, and I'm having the hardest time now. The kids are done. They're done with online. No matter how much of a clown show I am, they're over it. I'm having the hardest time engaging them. I mean, I don't care how much I stand up and dance on my head. They're done. They're done.
Like trying to do the clown. There's Jenna.
Hi,
Allie. Yeah, it looks like we have like the crew.
Yeah.
And I sent out like emails last week. It was like, hey, watch the recordings, because I can actually tell, you know, on YouTube. If it doesn't tell me who watched it, right, but it'll tell me how many times it's been watched. I'm like, plus we go over the assignments, and it helps.
Right.
No, it was nice to go back over the recording because it was week 2, I think. Well, yeah, because this is week 4. Yeah, I watched week 2, and it was nice because it gave me some help with writing that trauma paper. So yeah, it does. It makes a difference.
That's why we do it. Yep. Absolutely. So we can wait like maybe like 3 more minutes. You know, 7 to 5 is about right. But it's good to see you, ladies. Happy Wednesday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Anything special going on? Jenna's got green and curls.
Woo!
Green and curls. So what's up?
That
also have my
hair. Oh my! Oh, she's got green.
We got a green stockies. All right,
there we are.
I work at a preschool, so I try and be like super
a shamrock.
Wait, Jenna, like are you there? Like you're in person? You guys are in person teaching?
Yes, Irvine is in person. Yeah, and we just got access to the playgrounds this week.
Blessings.
Yes. Kids must be in heaven.
Yes,
blessings. Because
how do you? So good.
How do you? So what were you doing before? You just didn't go outside?
We went outside, but we weren't allowed on like the play structures. So we had to do like blacktop and grass, and it was so hard to like keep the kids away from the playgrounds because I work in SPED, and it's a pretty, it's like an AUT class.
A lot of reminders.
So they don't understand, you know, like this is for your safety. We can't do this because the germs, you know, to put it simply.
Yeah.
And it's a mostly nonverbal class. So.
Right. So it's not like you can have a discourse about it or
exactly. Yeah.
It's just like, remember. Another reminder. Uh-oh,
That's got to
lots
be
of
so tough.
those. But so they can actually access that now?
Yes, we can play on the playgrounds. Although there's like this crazy schedule that we have now that's like, yeah, it's like rotating. We can't like intermingle because we have to,
Your
stay
little pods have to
separated.
be separate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, do the children have to still stay 6 feet apart, even on the playground equipment?
I mean, that's another hard thing. Like,
Right. I was thinking, how do you
how
do
do you
that?
tell a 4-year-old nonverbal child with autism that you can't? I mean, it's mostly like side by side play at this point. They're not even like
Right.
playing together. So it's easy in that sense. And also we only have 4 kiddos in the class, which is
Oh,
awesome.
well, that's that makes a big difference right there.
Yeah. And so like one kid at each center in the classroom, and then outside they pretty much just do their own thing. So it's simple.
Is that the
way.
typical size of the classroom, or is there more? And they're just not there?
No. I don't think, actually, I don't know. This is only my 3rd week at this site. So I'm not sure how I know they are doing some online still.
All right.
For like parents who choose to keep their kiddos online. But then again, how do you teach preschool online? Like that just blows my mind too.
Yeah,
so
it's wild. I
Well,
don't
Yolanda's doing it.
So hard. It is, I can't even tell you how hard. Yeah, and I'm talking about children who are not on the spectrum by any stretch of the imagination, but especially for a 4-year-old boy who's full of energy. Like I tell the parents, can you make them run around outside before they sit down for an hour? Like, and I only do an hour.
I can't even sit still for an hour. I don't know how you expect a 4-year-old to sit still for an hour and absorb the information. I don't know. It's just,
I do a lot of interactive stuff. Everything's interactive. Like I roll the dice and whatever it lands on, okay, go find me, somebody 5 things, 5 red things. And I just really try to get them to move, because you can't expect kids to sit for an hour. This week I've had kids falling asleep.
Right.
They're tired.
I know.
I tell moms, just leave them. That's fine. I mean, what are you gonna do?
So we'll get started, but really quick, this actually feathers into, I usually say like, hi, how's it going? And we usually start with like, intros, but we wanted to talk about like how, like our self-care, maybe a topic of the week is maybe treat yourself. I was going to say, how do you guys treat yourself? How do you guys treat yourself?
Okay, I'm telling you. So we went to the wedding and I went on a crazy shopping spree, something I had not done in a long time. I got myself like, stuff that you wouldn't buy here, like winter stuff that was so cool and fashionable. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. And I did. Good. And for my daughter too.
Good.
My husband's not going to be happy when he sees a credit card bill, but oh well.
Listen, the amount of that little treat, even if it's kind of big price tag, it carries, right?
Right.
Just beautiful. Anyone else do treat yourself?
I went to Costco this weekend, and the shoes that I showed you guys, they look like Birkenstocks, but they're actually Skechers. They were only $20 and they're super comfy.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you treated yourself, but it was very practical and stylish.
It was. I think it was. I mean, the Birkenstocks with socks is all the rage right now. So
are you kidding? That's like going back to my high school years.
I know.
Jody, right? Like, well, so my daughter's in Oregon and U of O. And when we got there, I was like, I was so surprised because she's such an Orange County girl, right? And I swear, I've never seen more Birkenstocks in my entire life. When I go to
Oregon for you.
Yeah, I was so surprised she was there, and she's totally an Orange County girl. Hey, and there's Professor Lamarelle.
There she is. Hi, Gina.
Hi.
Oh, Professor Lamarelle. Sorry.
Hi. Good to see you. Oh, your hair looks pretty.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and you got your portrait in the back. That's beautiful. What are you working on?
No, this picture here.
Well, that's one of your mosaics, right?
Yeah, that's a rice picture of Native Americans with Mount Rushmore in the background. This is actually just rice, dyed rice.
Oh, it's beautiful. We were just talking about how we treat ourselves. Allie, have you been treating yourself nice lately?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little careful because my birthday is in just about a month. So I'm like, oh, I can just get myself a gift. So, I started off the month in the lead up to, and I got a different pair of leggings than I normally get. They're like very shiny. So different for me because a lot of my wardrobe is like a lot of black and then like a sweatshirt that has a color. So I'm excited.
But that's perfect. I mean, because when you treat yourself, you're not treating somebody else, you're treating yourself.
Yes.
Right. I may have, try not to treat myself with food, but like I got the big bag this time.
Mm-hmm. I got treated.
Yeah, and like a gummy bear fairy left one on her porch.
Yeah.
I was like,
and so I've been known to have a problem with gummy bears.
It's only a problem if it causes a problem, right?
Have you tried the Black Forest gummies?
That's what
I do. That's my favorite one. But Professor Laney had a kind that had that kind, and so I only have had 2 of them out of it because I hid them so well. I can't find where I hid them.
My life.
Yeah, and they're like softer and they're like
busy.
unique. They're like really good flavors
soft.
and they're natural color. They use natural colorings like beets and stuff.
Beet.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm like,
so yes. So I got treated and that was really nice. And I treated myself to some garden time. So I have boysenberry plants in my backyard. I love boysenberries. And so they're just starting to come up out of the ground and it's just really fun. So I was taking off some of the old stalks because apparently you're supposed to like cut them off down right to the ground and then the rhizomes kind of pop up. And I always get nervous about doing that. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm waiting.
Treat yourself with your favorite berries.
My favorite berries. No berries yet.
Boysenberry blackberry cross. And they're about this big.
Wow.
Oh, yum.
Sure. So this is usually about the amount of people we get. We get caught a few more that pop in and out. But we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm already recording, so that's beautiful.
Yay!
Which is lovely. So
I'm going to turn off my video so that I can eat.
Beautiful. But yes, thank you for joining.
Great. But I'm here. I'm here. I'm just.
We see you.
Just going to
enjoy your dinner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so self-care is an important part of our practice that we talk about. And we're going to be getting more into that now as we're moving out of this trauma piece. And next week, we'll finish the kind of the abuse cycle piece with sexual abuse and getting into child trafficking a little bit and some of those issues. And then we're going to kind of really go back and really start working about, okay, all of this, we've learned a lot about trauma, the biological processes, that intergenerational piece, and how we get there and how that passes down. And then we're going to start moving into, okay, what do we do with these kids now that we have in our classroom, that we now have a better understanding maybe of where some of those behaviors come from and how we might see them acting out in the classroom. We're going to talk about developing that quiet space in the classroom, developing that out a little bit more, which I think some of the schools are already doing. It's kind of one of maybe the first pieces that I see when I go into class. I'm noticing it's not just the book and pillows and maybe a couple of stuffed animals now, but it's now starting to be the sensory things and the lights and the widgets and so many things for children to choose from, where there still can be a part of a classroom environment, but yet they can be separate. And how we go about like letting children basically like self-refer themselves to that quiet place when they need it, and to be able to check in and help them learn to self-regulate on their own. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into the self-care piece a lot more. One of the projects, just to give you a heads up a little bit about what's coming, is when we get into self-care, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to find a podcast or something along that nature, whether it's a yoga type, a meditation type thing, and practice or listen to that for 3 weeks. And you're going to journal about that. I've put some up on Canvas. One of my favorites is Being Well by Dr. Rick Hansen. I just love his programs. There's something about his voice, and it's a dialogue between him and his son.
I was going to say,
and it just feels like you're walking and talking with. I listen to him a lot while I'm walking. And there's a lot of research that talks about when you're let me just get off of that, and then I'll go back to the research. So and listen to it, and then really think about like how that is maybe helping you, not helping you. You might have to find one that really fits. And somebody was talking about self-compassion, and some of the journal entries and some of the other work that's coming in, I'm feeling and seeing like we need a lot more self-compassion, just to give ourselves that break, that we don't have to be so hard on ourselves about this perfectionism and that being right. And when we get into the talking about in childhood disrupted, the good enough family, we're really going to see that tonight about that piece. And so we're going to talk about that, but that's just so down the road. So that's kind of be more like one of your final projects. So I just want to give you a heads up on that's going to be coming after spring break. We're really going to spend a lot of time in that area. And so I want you to think about, we're going to start with the Childhood Disrupted book in chapter 5, when it talks about the good enough family. I hope you had a chance to at least skim through part of it and get through some of it. When you think about neglect, we're talking about emotional neglect this week. So when you think about emotional neglect and how that comes out, there's a lot of ways that starts, and you want to queue up the.
yes,
you want
absolutely.
to queue up.
Let me do a new share, because
okay, so we're gonna do a new share.
Yeah, let me do a new share. And I learned that if you optimize the sound, let's make sure I have it here. Yes, first it's going to go, there we go. I do show this in 107, so if I've had you in other classes, you may see this, but I think it's a great foundation to talk about what a typical response is from a child trying to get a connected or what's the word, an expected response, versus down a little bit further down the line when the children are not getting that response, and how they adapt their behavior based on responses. So this particular video, the child in question, the child that we're focusing on, is not being hurt. They may be in distress. Right. I think it's a total of 2 minutes. And this mom is a champ, does such a good job. And so they'll walk you through it, but I didn't want to stop the video in the middle to say that. But this is how you can see babies will get their needs met. Absolutely.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby.
Just a
The
poker
baby
face.
very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like,
What was that?
the
3
good, the bad,
seconds of
and the ugly.
recovery?
The
5?
good
Right.
is that normal stuff that goes on that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Wow. Whoa. What do you guys think? It's an oldie bitty goodie.
I've seen that one before, and every time it just stresses me out.
Right?
I can't.
Like, ooh.
Yeah, I don't know. I work with an infant right now. I mean, she's only 3 weeks old right now, but still,
Wow.
like, I just have that in my, like, kind of in the back of my head at all times. And after reading about like how infants can pick up on, like, even at that young age, they can pick up on like arguments and stuff between parents. I try and kind of like keep myself as like a happy space when I'm with the baby. So
there was a lot of that attunement going on between the child and the mother. There was that synchronicity of their interactions, that give and take, and they were feeding off of each other, and they were laying down some really strong neural pathways. And then you have this break, and then now imagine if that was happening all day.
Right.
Like in the case of, like in Born for Love, if you had a chance to get into that yet this week, in chapter 10, the title of that chapter is Glued to the Tube, and it talks about with Charlie, Brandon.
Is Brandon.
Brandon, yeah. So Brandon basically was he was like what we would call glued to the tube as a kid, the boob tube, we called it. My dad called it, and I'm sure a lot of other people called it too. And he watched so much TV that he literally became a television set. You know, he spoke in jingles, because we know, like, when you watch TV, what happens during a commercial? What happens to the volume?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Up, right? Yeah. So his attention is now being focused on those commercials, and they're catchy, and they have music or flash, and they have something that attracts him. And so he starts really memorizing those jingles and starts really speaking like that and acting like that, and literally like kind of becoming like that.
Right. Well, think about it. That's the most consistent thing in his life, seeing the same commercial over and over again in between. Right. His mom, and again, you know, not to give it all away, but his mom was, you know, severely depressed.
Yeah,
and so,
postpartum depression.
Yeah. And so she was trying her best, but even her best was not enough. And so I call it the tablet babysitter, or the electronic babysitter. And how many times have you seen that in public? Have you guys ever seen that? When there's like a stroller baby's barely able to sit up, but they have like this thing, and they, it's probably a tablet or whatnot, but then they put it in this, bright case that makes it better. And you're like, ooh, what happened to
That
a child just being
protective,
in a stroller and looking around and engaging with their environment?
right? Not happening, not making that eye contact with other people, strangers, and then maybe looking back to mom as that, secure base and going back and forth. That's not happening.
And their
So you
eyes.
think about all that that child is really missing out on. And to a little bit about the background, if you, Brandon's mom had severe depression. She had postpartum depression. She smoked. Baby laid in the crib. The baby's teeth had bottle rot because it had a bottle all the time in its mouth. And so, and she got to a point where she didn't ignore his cries, but it was the fact that she didn't attend to him either. So she may have looked over at him, but what everything that he got from TV. He didn't get any of that love from him, but he got his language from the TV. He got, how do you learn empathy from TV? What commercial or what show? Well, I don't know. I have to say I love Coco Bellin, but what show do you know that even like the kids shows that have empathy, like they try, but they're sometimes that empathy is mixed with maybe a little bit of bullying or some other kind of negative behavior that allows them this empathic response to come forward to help, or a helping response. But it's not always that, it's not always a key part of that. But yet that's educational television, right?
Right. And think about now that we're in COVID and parents have kids home most of the time. I mean, they're just now transitioning back. There's probably been more of the TV babysitter now than in history. And what are the after effects that are going to happen with these kids trying to re-socialize, or are they going to be able to catch up? It's an entire year really of typical socialization just missing. Oh, and so I'm curious to see what the aftermaths of this, basically we're going to try to reintegrate into society. And, some kids are going to do well and some kids aren't. And I wonder how we're going to see that generationally. Because, yeah, that's another piece of it. Because
I think there's going to be the research that's going to come out, that they're going to be doing and they're doing now and continue is going to be really, really interesting to see what happens.
Right. Because neglect, right, as we talk about neglect, think about it. So if a child's in front of the TV, that the parent's there, that to me is, so when I grew up, I thought neglect was the parents were nowhere around. Well, that is a form of neglect, but you can have parents 100% present and still neglectful, right? And so I'm not 100% certain which one's worse. I mean, we're all different, but at the same time, if you have a parent there and you've learned that that person's not going to meet your needs, I think that's a little bit more damaging of that person not even being there, right? And so what is that person not being there yet still present look like? It could be somebody who's busy, could be somebody who's is struggling with substance abuse or depression, or somebody who removes themselves or tries to, maybe sequester themselves or sequester the child and like separates themselves in certain ways. And so I think these strategies where children have a basis of how to get their needs met, that has changed too, right? If I'm looking for a parent who's there, but they might be passed out on the couch, how can I get my needs met? I think we're going to get some crafty kids even coming reintegrating into society who've learned these new skills, these adaptive skills. It's a lot. It's a lot. And then as you all are working with the kids and you're going to start seeing them face to face, you're going to see different behaviors that were not there a year ago. And whether or not they would have been there over the course of a year under typical circumstances or not, I mean, you have to deal with this new normal. So we're glad that you guys are here learning about these factors that will be in play, but it's a really tough situation because we can't fix it, but we can acknowledge it, we can be aware of it, and we can keep that in our minds as we're working with these kids. they may have trouble socializing because they haven't done it in a year.
And in addition to that piece about not socializing, if they're around, like Dr. Perry talks about, with when the mothers have depression, the children tend to be withdrawn. And what you have is, instead of these strong neural connections producing these positive neural connections, what you have is, he calls it, their mirror neurons are copying depression and reproducing it in themselves. And so these mirror neurons that they're reproducing are not the ones that we would like them to reproduce. And the density of those neurological connections are going to be much less. I think a lot of times you've seen the brain. This is one with lots of neurons, and then you see this is the one with not a lot, and this is the one that has very little interaction or stimulation. That's the brain. That's what happens in this. There's not a lot of neurological connections that are being laid down within these children who don't have the connections with other people.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider there. And I think, again, as a reminder, neglect is the largest category of abuse, and it's the hardest one to prove. So when you are making a report on neglect, you have to have something connected to it, like the teeth. Dental care, neglecting dental care is child abuse. And we'll talk about cultural practices tonight, but I've worked with families who, they didn't want to argue with the baby, and they would say, well, the baby just wants the bottle at night. And you're just like, there's 1,000 reasons why we don't do that. And then their teeth are rotting out. And then the parents would say, well, we don't have money to fix that, and we're going to wait till they get their adult teeth in. Or I've seen kids with gold teeth where the parents are trying to fix it, but it got to a point where it had to be a gold tooth in a child. And there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to like basic healthcare and dental care. That is the quickest form of neglect that you can identify. The rest is a little bit trickier, but you have to keep notes on that at your center. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, so what else might you see that would be an indicator of neglect in the classroom other than the dental piece?
I've seen lack of hygiene.
Yes,
exactly. That's a quick indicator for me, the lack of hygiene.
Like what exactly? So
there, like I've had kids come in who are, obviously because I work with Head Start, so already we're doing with the underserved, where the kids, and again, and it goes back to the same thing that we talked about, where you have to be careful, because one was clearly neglect, where the child was dirty. Okay. And then in the second situation, my TA was flipping out, and we keep extra clothes. And I went in the bathroom, and he hadn't been bathed probably all weekend. But in speaking to the mother before I did anything, I really took it upon myself to ask her, like, what's going on? I had completely somehow not known, because I had just started, that they have a severely autistic child. And so that day that she came to pick him up, she had a long conversation with me and let me know that that weekend had been a really bad weekend for them. And she apologized to me, and she's like, I know he was, and he normally, he was dropped off. He was always bathed. And again, so not jumping to conclusions, but trying to investigate, I realized I could have made a false report essentially. But yeah, and initially I was like, oh my God, he looks like he rolled in the dirt and you just brought him to school.
Right. And there's more to that than meets the eye, because I have one of those kids at home where he likes to wear the same socks for a week, and you're like, listen, we've got lots of clean socks. He just is not doing that, and that's not the battle I'm going to go down on. But that communication with the teacher is imperative. Like when the parents are forthright with you, it's easy, like you said, Yolanda, to like assess that further.
But you know what? They dropped him off. It wasn't, it was like, well, could you have shared, like when the dad dropped off, he didn't say anything. And it was just like, I went through the whole, and I just took him in the bathroom, because the last thing I wanted was for him to go through the day feeling different or less than. So I changed him, I cleaned him up. We always keep a spare change of clothes. So when mom showed up, I was like, can we talk? And then she stayed and we had a conversation. And then she cleared up. She goes, the older brother had a really, really bad weekend. And honestly, we just put him to bed. And
this is all we got.
And I said, you know what? Gotcha. And she said, I said, here are his dirty clothes. And she goes, thank you so much. Like, it meant so much to her that I took the time to just like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I can to fix it. And
provide
the other one was neglect. The other one was definitely neglect, but there was already a pattern there.
Absolutely. And yeah, an isolated event is just an opportunity to create more of a relationship and show the child that you care and the family that you care and things like that. So well done, Yolanda. It's very good.
Trust me, I have my moments, and I still keep in touch with them because he's like, oh my God, I still keep in touch with them.
Isn't that ironic how it goes? The ones that have some of these outlying issues, you tend to connect really, really well with and develop these long-term relationships. That's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Right. So what else could look like neglect besides hygiene?
I know like kids are active and their clothes could tear, but like not like worn clothes in a sense, not like hand-me-downs, but like holes, or maybe they don't fit and they're sending their child to school in clothes that don't fit.
Like way too
especially
big.
like shoes. I think that's one of those things I noticed is the shoes. They're walking funny or something like that. The shoes are too small. Shoes are expensive, or can be.
But too small shoes can disrupt anybody's day, sensory.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Or too big of clothes when they're, maybe the only person who had clean clothes ish was big brother or whatnot. And so, yeah. And that can be distracting too, when your clothes are kind of all over the place and getting in the way of everything. So what else could possibly be neglect?
I was thinking, I can't think of like a specific instance, but I know emotional neglect is another form of neglect. I'm not exactly sure how that would present itself.
Right. So what is emotional neglect?
Like an inability to like comfort themselves at an age when they should be able to do something like that, maybe.
Absolutely. You want to say more about that, Jody?
Oh, okay. Yes. That crying, that overreacting to something maybe that, you want to explore a little bit more and find out maybe what's behind that. Or even a numbness. So think about when we see children who are maybe we suspect abuse, they're acting violently in the classroom towards other kids, and maybe they're or acting out scenarios at home that they've heard. There again is words that they say to each other. But then what about you have the child who is the pleaser, who, oh, let me help you do this, oh, let me help you do that, oh, they're right by your side, oh, you need this, I get it, I'll do that. So would that raise kind of like draw your attention and make you question that? What about that would maybe, send a signal that they're always wanting to be right there and be perfect and do everything?
I don't have an experience in the classroom, but my little cousin, or my cousin's daughter's my little cousin, she is 3 and she's really been around adults her whole life. Her grandma watched her and she started preschool. I think she goes once a week, but that was her at first because she interacts with adults all the time and she just has her little baby brother. So she didn't know how to respond to that. So without knowing, I guess if that continued over time, then that would need to be a conversation with the families. But then she, was able to interact with the other kids appropriately. So I think over time and multiple experiences with the child continuing to like, oh, I can help you, or I want to, do something to make you proud of me or please you, that would be something to be on alert for.
And what happens when they try and it doesn't go right and they fall apart? That like, I wasn't good enough.
Right. Right. I think that self-regulation piece is critical, because it's interesting. I know in kids, we know the developmental appropriateness for self-regulation at certain ages, but some kids are behind, some kids are ahead. And I also see, and I know neglect is technically when parents aren't involved, but sometimes I also have seen families that split up, and then there's like a hypervigilance in one respect, and then the other house there's no attending to the child.
Mhm.
And you might see where one parent on a certain day of the week, it's their day, and they might come if the child's distressed and you have to call the parent, and the other day you have a different parent who comes, and then you see these different techniques, right? And so sometimes you'll see an overindulgence and then a neglect. And so sometimes this child just cannot figure out, should I please you? Should I not please you? Like sometimes they're overly attentive and sometimes they're withdrawn. And I can't imagine little people trying to figure the adult world out. And they get stuck. They get stuck in the middle, and it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
And here, may I ask something?
Of course.
So, like for instance, obviously, for me, it's been demographics. So when I was at another Head Start, obviously there was a lot of what you're describing. The child really didn't know which direction. They had to learn to be a chameleon. Like some of the people we read about.
Yeah.
The young lady who in the book, who became the chameleon because she was just trying to fit into her world. Then you have children like, now I'm in a different school, and now I'm in a really nice part of Santa Ana, and these are, I mean, for all intents and purposes, are first world Santa Ana children. Most of them have mom and dad, and I'm seeing, like, I've got almost a 4-year-old who still drinks a bottle. I've got kids who almost 4 whose mom's on camera feeding them with a spoon. I'm like, whoa. So I'm going from one extreme to the other.
Right.
So now I'm struggling with the lack of self-regulation because they are, I don't know. So I'm really struggling with how to now, understanding rightfully what was, but this is a whole different dynamic for me.
This is a great segue into the assignment, Jody. You want to?
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you, Yolanda.
So,
yeah, let me pull it up.
Within cultures, there are very different expectations, right? And I'm not talking about like people who have families or people they're like third generation Americans. I'm talking about more like the families who the parents are maybe first generation Americans and their grandparents are here and haven't completely have done minimal enculturation into the norms of westernized US, however you want to put it that correctly. So you look at that and you think, the great example is like, spanking. Okay, I know that in some parents, I'm going to get the spoon, or I'm going to get the chunkala, or I'm going to get the. I mean, how many grew up with the chunkala threat? Do I have to get the chunkala?
Listen, I tell people it's so significant that Disney wrote it in. It was in Coco, where like the mama gets the, just like she threatens it and then she boom bang, it's in her hand and she's cocked back. I was like, well, if Disney wrote that in, like it's a thing, it's a big thing.
Yeah. And so so that's a part of their culture, but their expectations about how they see children and how children should behave are very different from one culture to the next. And so I use an example of my, I think I used it in a response to somebody's discussion board, or I was talking about it maybe in a feedback to a journal. So there's a little pharmacist that I go to in Fountain Valley, but it's really close to Yeah, it's in Fountain Valley. So high Asian population, high Vietnamese population in that area where it is. And he his wife, he and his family had a baby about, his wife had a baby about, I'm gonna guess probably about a year and a half ago. And the parents are taking care of the daughter. And he was asking me, he's like, I'm having this real problem because, you know, my wife and I, we want to pick up the baby when the baby's crying, and my parents are, no, let her cry, let her, you know. And so he's like, I'm just caught in this middle. I don't know, like, you know, and without saying it, within the Asian culture, you know, what he's telling me, and from what, you know, what I understand with this is like, you respect your elders, you don't question your elders. If you do something wrong, you're not only bringing shame on yourself, but on every generation that's come before you. It's called filial piety. And it's that whole idea of you owe it to your ancestors to be perfect, to be to not mess up, and the consequences, the guilt that goes along with that is huge. And so here they are. We want to raise our daughter one way at our home, and then she's at grandma's house during the day, like 3 or 4 days a week, and they're like, oh, just let her cry. So how is that child going to navigate those two worlds?
Right. And that's also almost allegorical for being in school too. If you have one culture at home and then one culture at school, the child has to navigate and learn those two ways. That's got to be confusing, possibly traumatizing.
Yeah. And so how do you do that?
So I pulled up the assignment, and then I clicked on the suggested link too. So I pulled that up too. We can peek at it.
So what I would like you to do is, I'd like you to think about abuse, and it has to do with not just abuse, but how, back to like children's sense of agency. What kind of role does a child have in making decisions within your family, within your culture? And if you're a second or third generation, you may have to find somebody, or maybe talk to somebody who has that. What was that like? Back to that, what were those traditions like within the country of your origin? What was that like in there? Grandma ruled the house. You know, it was grandma who had, if grandma wasn't happy, nobody was happy. And there's somebody, I think, probably in every family that you can pick out and go, that's the person who runs the show. You know, if that person isn't happy, you're going to be bending over backwards, because they're going to make your life miserable until they get what they want, or that you do it their way. But there's something about how they reared children and how they looked at, when I say abuse, some people, you know, in some cultures, it's totally fine for I'm trying to read mine. Let me make it be full screen because I can't see it.
I can also make it a little bit bigger too.
Okay, there. Oh no, I just had mine down. Okay. I had mine not in full screen. I'm on my laptop, not on my big. So what I did is I went through and I put a bunch of, if you look at the module, I just pulled articles that I found that talked about different cultures. And
let me go back
so you can pick, oh yeah, go back to modules. And I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, and I really felt like if I know what I want, I don't want to set you guys up by not asking you, you know, to find some of the information that might be helpful, that might have it in there, and then it'll give you maybe other places. So so I did find found a little bit more on Latino cultures. Asian cultures was a little bit hard. African American cultures, I know the least about. I know some, but not a lot. And I have lots of books I could pull out, but I really didn't want to make this into this ginormous, deeply research-based project. It's just kind of like an in general type thing. because we know that every family is different, and how they interpret their culture and how they, how much of their culture is a part of their life, that they pay attention to their culture. Marianne, Professor Lane, I can't do that. You're Marianne.
Yeah, Marianne's just fine, especially halfway through. We've kind of crossed that bridge.
Hopefully we have by now. She was saying, oh, St. Patrick's Day, right? The green, and I was like, yeah, my family, you Scotch, you were orange on St. Patrick's Day because we were Scotch, and Scotland and Ireland, of course, are right on the British Isle, and and they were at war with each other a lot over history. And so there's that. My mother was always, oh, we were never allowed to wear green to school on St. Patrick's Day. Well, how do you think it feels to be the only orange person in school?
Right, but that kind of feathers into the bullying piece, because I remember if you didn't wear green, you'd get pinched.
Yeah.
Did you guys get that?
Yeah, they had to knock that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also, like, what if you had multiple heritages, or you are in a mixed race house, or a mixed religion house, or mixed culture house?
Right.
Yeah. So how does that, how does that work out? Which one do you adhere to? Which one do you do more? And there's some research about, when people grow up and they get married, do they stay near their mother's side of the family, or, I mean, the wife's side of the family, or the husband's side of the family? Right. And so that kind of gives you indicators on which culturally significant practices will probably show up in the new generation.
And can I add to that? I mean, obviously I'm Mexican and my husband's Italian, and how we both, oh God, my poor child, and how we grew up, and I'm first generation and he's third generation. So, I'm the first, I mean, I wasn't even born here. So, I mean, I came here as an infant. So it really, to merge our two cultures, and yes, there are a lot of similarities, obviously the religion, the sense of family, there's a lot of things that we did have in common, but it was difficult coming to terms, especially discipline, I have to be honest, was a big one for us.
In which way?
Well, I was, I was spare the rod, spoil the child kind of parent, because that's how I was raised.
You mean the Old Testament?
Oh, yes, ma'am. and he, because his mother had been that way, he didn't want to be that way. So it was a little bit of a struggle in the beginning.
I can imagine.
It's interesting, coming to those pieces together. And even when Jody was talking about the Asian communities, I did work as an ABA therapist and supervisor for 2 years in Little Saigon. Ooh. And I was in their homes. I was in all primarily Vietnamese families, but there was like one family who had this younger generation, and there was a Caucasian dad. And it was interesting to see all these different little pieces. And then in other families, there was multi-generations in one family.
Right.
And I mean like blended families in one house, 3 generations in one, new husband, old sister-in-law, like just a lot of just nebulous little pieces. And to see the similarities and the differences was amazing. I mean, I felt like I was like saturated, but at the same time, there were still these little pieces where even in one culture, you have this one family did it this way and this one family did it this way. And there's still a disconnect sometimes. Rarely do people line up perfectly.
No.
Child rearing practices.
That's right. You have the between cultures, and you have the within culture variations.
Absolutely.
That happen. And so after I pulled all this other stuff, then I ran into this article, which was that one that had all the, which one was it? The one that had all the chapters.
Oh yeah. So I pulled it up already. So let's see. Can you see?
Yeah, go back to that one. So then I ran across this child abuse in ethnic minority and immigrant communities.
You can see it, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, good. So if you go down through there, it talks about child abuse and in the United States and Canada. I believe this came from Canada, I want to say. And then it goes back into the different the other cultures, and it kind of breaks them down a little bit. This was actually a course in this and I don't know how, just you start searching and you never know what you're going to find, and you go down rabbit holes, and then eventually I found this course and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So because it really goes into the well, it says Grand Canyon, from Grand Canyon University, so it could have come from the US.
Yeah,
But can you scroll back up to where the different chapters are? There we go.
yes.
Okay, so then but this chapter about the cultural perceptions and the relevant theoretical frameworks and the child abuse, well, you don't have to go into that, but pretty much I think just said like 5, 6, and 7, 5, 6, 7, and 8 chapters. Those are the ones I think you're going to find the most information on. And you don't have to read them or anything, but you just might find some, you just might find something in there.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, I was looking at it and I could skim through it and go, oh yeah, this looks really cool. This would be great for 110. Exactly.
Yeah, we talk about in one town how education has a direct correlation, and so does the parents' work has a correlation to the child discipline specifically. Right. So the more blue collar, menial, lower income producing jobs, the more physical the parents are. And that's the same with education. The lower the educated, the more physical. And even if they choose not to be physical, they're just more traditional. Right. It's with education comes an expansion of choices and other things, maybe adoption of the larger culture or the newer culture or newer practices. Right. So it's, I mean, again, so talking about cultural practices, but what about the intergenerational cultural practices? Right. And so there's a lot there. I love it.
There's a lot there, and I'm not looking for like a really deep dive. It's just
this is not a lit review. Like, this is not
it's not a lit review. It's not anything. It's really just thinking about your own culture. How does your culture view abuse? Is hitting a child with a chunkla, is that abuse? Is threatening the child abuse? Is that, in some cultures they say yes, but then you go look at the South, predominantly low income, corporal punishment, big time. And a lot of African American are more likely to adopt corporal punishment. And even like I think about like, at what point does it stop?
Yeah.
What age do you say that corporal punishment is no longer like appropriate? Or I was trying to remember how old I was when I got my last spanking.
Well, I know my husband said that he went to parochial school coming up and he got the paddle a bunch of times. So, I don't know, 1980 maybe was the last wallop he got. Right. But I think some of those practices are still in place because private schools are.
They're allowed to.
Is that allowed in schools down in the South? Not public schools? Do you know if it's still allowed?
I don't know.
That's a really good question.
I know someone, I forget what the program's called, like you've graduated college and it's for your teaching credential, but they place you at a school. And so she taught middle or high school in the South, and she was from here. She grew up here her whole life in California, and they like encouraged her to send, like if she wouldn't paddle her middle or high school age students herself, to send them to the office to like for that punishment. And that was within the last 5 years, which is when she told that story, I was like, that's insane.
Paddling teenagers, you'll be lucky if they don't grab that paddle and boot you upside the head.
Yeah.
Wow. No, not comfortable, not okay. Wow.
Yeah. And I believe it is still, when you get into the Bible Belt, look at the Bible Belt within the country, I believe that's where you're probably going to find it. And I know that in Utah, that's still, I believe that's still allowed within the Mormon culture, especially. Yeah. And so, yeah, and it all depends. There's that whole mix of religion and cultural values and ethnic values, and you get into that, and it's like especially when I was thinking about like the Mormon church in general, and you just don't question your elders in some religions. It just doesn't happen. It's
happening though right now. Like right now, Netflix just came out with a doc on that, and like the young people in the church are really starting to unravel a little bit.
Well, they say that if you question anything from religion standpoint, that it's the devil in you that's making you question it. It's Satan, and that you're not feeling the spirit enough. You need to pray about it and read more Bible and whatever. My best friend is Mormon, and it's interesting hearing her talk about some of these things.
It can't be easy. And when kids are young, they follow right along, but then when you get older, right? And so, and that's not the only religion that can be that strict, right? There's other religions that are, have their choices and things like that. And now we have to, be culturally competent in terms of, not judging, but at the same time, if that child is abused under that guise of that religion, it is still a child abuse report.
Well, that's the other thing though, like with child abuse within the church, like my friend was telling me that teenagers have to disclose like anything sexual that they do to their bishop, like an old man. They have to disclose all of that to them. That's just very strange to me.
And I think that's also re-traumatizing, because you feel guilty because you did something you're not supposed to. And then you have to it was like, for me, like I tell people I'm a recovering Catholic. And so I remember being like hauled into church because I was 12 and saw a PG-13 movie. And it was like, well, I have to feel guilty about this and then tell some person who doesn't know who I am and is going to make me say all this stuff over here. Does that really change the fact that I did it? So I definitely know that there's some situations. So I don't know what the practices are for the little ones, like the preschoolers or whatnot, but what I'm trying to say is, like, if you see those telltale marks, you still have to make the report. We can't say, well, that's their cultural practice. While we want to respect cultural practices of abuse that leave the mark, it's not okay. I'm going to put my foot down on that one. I mean, we have to we have to tiptoe a little bit of a line there, because if we're saying, if a child comes back and says, well, I had to do this for my church, and it was maybe physical labor, or that thing where, Jody, you mentioned earlier about like standing on your toes and the nose in the corner and thing like that, where that could cross a line, it doesn't leave a mark. And so there's that fine line where you're like, oh, I want to, but have you ever had to handle that as a childcare provider, when there was something that came up sort of religiously peculiar, but not
me?
Like, you.
Me.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of anything. No.
Right.
Never had anything. And I had a real mix. I had from Native American. I had more combinations. We were like the UN at my house. It was a crazy good. Sometimes I look at a picture I have of all the kids there, and I just go, oh my gosh, what a pile.
Little rainbow troop. And so again, this is just, we want to see what you see. We don't need to see, like, you don't need to critically evaluate all the research that is available. But again, you're asking right now for them to look at these resources and then use the template. So do you want me to pull the template up?
Yeah, pull the template up. So I thought it's an APA template. It's 6th edition. I actually just ordered my 7th edition.
Oh, nice.
But so I don't know how. I'm like, I kept thinking, oh God, am I really going to use this? But what I did is I set up a Word document. It is basically, it's got the whole, wherever it is, you can just save it as yours, and wherever there's brackets, put in what you want, the title page, and then I set up the heading and everything. And then I just said, you know, introduction, then I just put parenting, abuse, Hispanic parenting, you know, what are their norms of parenting, what is abuse, and then do this third piece, then is the comparing of the cultures.
Gorgeous.
And so talk about you know, like the child, how is the child viewed within the family structure? And some of that for your family, you'll be able to share that within your culture. For other cultures, you may not have a lot of information on it, but if you find it, that's, you know, that's fine. I mean, it took me a lot of work to dig out what I did, but it's really just getting you to think about other cultures and how does culture influence discipline, and how does culture, and like you were saying, Yolanda, you know, here we are, and you and your husband had a hard time bringing two cultures together. I was sharing a quote with Marianne before that I highlighted in Childhood Disrupted on page 121, and it says, parenting is simply the hardest, best job you'll ever have. And if that wasn't the truth, it is.
And that's why I tell people, I'm like, you know, there's hundreds and if not thousands of books out there. And even if you read every single one, you're going to find some outside all them books every single day.
Right.
I mean, trust me, I used to do that. We used to talk about bibliotherapy in some other class, but I just went to Barnes and Noble and took a picture of where it says parenting, you know, the parenting tab over the bookshelf. And it's
Right.
everything like raising a vegan kid in an omnivore world, and like, you know, aggressive girls. Is it bad? You know, it's every little subtle nuance about parenting. Yet there's still more. There's still
Right.
more to know. And it's one of those things. And another piece, when we were talking about that, the physiological piece, the developmental milestones of kids, you know, in 107, we talk about the child doesn't even smile at you for 90 days. Doesn't even like start to do that little serve and response thing. They don't, that connection, that little peekaboo and all that fun stuff, that social smile doesn't even show up for 90 days. So tell me, when's the last time you worked in any job where nobody smiled at you for 3 months? And how long would you stick with it?
Miriam smiles.
They smile, but it's not a social smile.
I know.
Yeah. Like,
she does make little smiles. She's 2 weeks old, yes, on Monday. So and she always seems to have a little smile on her face, but it's not a social smile. I know what you're saying.
Right. And it's like we are looking for that reinforcement as a parent. And so it's one of those things. Right? And I mean, even for those you have the kiddos that you work with and whatnot, and how many times have you helped them with something and 4 seconds later you help them again with the exact same thing, right? And so it's one of those things that you're in it for the long haul. And it doesn't matter what you read, it doesn't matter what philosophy you start with. I had a very wise man tell me a few years ago, and he was, of course, a confirmed bachelor, an older gentleman, no children, and he said, you know what, Marianne, the best part about complaining about your parents is that you're going to have kids who are going to complain about all the other mistakes you made. Right. Maybe 100% different, but there are still somebody, you know, there's still somebody behind you going, I didn't like it when you did this, and I didn't like it when you did that. Right. But we get to make our own choices and our own, what's the word? I call it like plan A. Like, you know, when you're coming up and you say, when I have kids, I'll never do X, Y, and Z. And then,
how many?
And then about 50% of those things show up, and no matter how hard you try, no matter.
Can I mean, even just in reading chapter 5, something to piggyback on something you said, Jody, on the chapter 5, and the title is fitting, right? The Good Enough Family.
I know, I loved it.
I loved it.
How could this be so perfect?
Right.
Many individuals who grow up with adverse childhood experiences later worry about what kind of parents they will be. And, you know, and I wrote amen, because I remember, and I wrote, we become, you know, and it was in there that, you know, we become neurotic in our in our parenting to either avoid making the same mistakes or so that we don't repeat the past, so it really, it sticks with you, and it really, it's hard to break that cycle. I mean, honestly, I mean, for me, it's an everyday struggle, and and obviously it goes into it a little deeper here, about raising a teenager. It's like, yeah, you think that that child has sent me to the end of, where I wanted to beat her to a pulp, but I didn't. But again, oh yeah, because children will test your limits.
Oh, yeah. And they know exactly where that limit it lives. They know exactly where it is.
Always.
Yeah.
Nakazawa poses a really interesting question. It's in here, but it's in the context of Grace's story. And it said, what is a good enough mom or dad? What is a good enough one? Because Dr. Perry, in one of his, I went to see him speak once out in San Bernardino about 2 or 3 years ago. That was about 2 years ago. And one of the things he said was, even an okay parent is just fine.
Is okay. Yeah.
Is just fine. And I mean, that was like so profound to me, because my kids are in their 30s right now. And I was thinking that, was I, you'll judge yourself, and it's like, did I repeat the mistakes that my parents made? Not really. Did I make some? I made plenty of new ones of my own.
Correct.
But it's like, but was I good enough? Was I good enough? I used to say, my thinking was that parenting is a really crappy job. You don't get a report card for how good of a parent you are until your child enters society as either a drain on society or as a contributor to society.
Right.
And then you're
like, oh,
right? But you really don't know until you launch them, and they kind of like either sink or swim. And then it's at that point you go, okay, please just, don't let me have, a bunch of drains on society, that are keeping, but you don't know. Your kids are going to say, well, yeah, I did this, you did this, I'm not going to do that. So it all just comes around. It's a circle.
Can I ask you something, Jody, on that same note? So did you find, I mean, obviously, given the little we've shared with each other about our ACEs and our past history, when did you figure out, or when did your children say, Mom, you did okay? Or when did you get that? Because I'm starting to get that in college, because she's now in college with people from all over the country. And all of a sudden I'm like, I am the best parent. I mean, it's all relative. I mean, when did you start getting that validation of you did better than your parents did? Because that's what I'm looking for, and I'm starting to get it, and I'm happy. But
I think it was different for each of the kids.
Okay.
It was different for each of them. I think my daughter got a lot of my type A, go be perfect type stuff.
Okay.
And we used to have to tell her all the time as a kid, we'll still love you if you get a B. It's okay. It's really okay. We will still love you, and she was just very driven from a very early age. And they were all different, but there's nothing better for me right now. Our youngest son lives with us. And he's right now, he's in the middle of a divorce, and he lives with us. And when Caden, his son, is here has his visitation with daddy, it's very often that my son will wrap the three of us, will hug, and it's like, you are the best mama.
Aww.
Because what he sees is he sees how I treat Caden, and I think he understands that happened to him as well, which it did. And he sees me being like how I am with Caden as a grandma. I was sharing with Marianne this story about, been really watching while Caden takes a bath. He's got these 3 sharks, 3 orcas, and one's small, medium, and large. He decided the big one was dead. We didn't name them any, daddy, mama, and baby, and it's very interesting how he plays with them. He plays with baby shark with mommy, baby shark with daddy. Not very often does he play with them as a family, but yet there's still a family in his eyes, I think, still. But what he'll do is he'll like take the daddy shark up to baby shark, go, oh, daddy love. And here he is, he's 2.5. And then he'll take, there's a big turtle, that's daddy turtle, and there's just a little baby turtle, that's the baby turtle. So it's really interesting. So now we have this other family dynamic of just daddy and baby. And he'll take the daddy turtle, and the daddy's turtle flipper will lay on top of the baby turtle. And he'll go, oh. And I think he has, his roots of empathy at 2.5 are so deep. It's really amazing how he has really picked up. He's very loving, very, very loving and everything. But it's so interesting to watch his dynamics with these two sets of toys in the bathtub. And that's what he plays with a lot in there. And I think it's kind of probably a really good, therapy type situation, because I can kind of get a little bit of a read, not that I'm at all qualified to do it, but I do notice some like things in there that are just kind of interesting.
Can I share a fun little job interview posting?
Sure.
With Mother's Day's coming up next month.
Oh, okay.
You guys have seen this one. Cool. It says, we've created a fake job.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second. Thank you. Sorry.
This is pre-COVID too, which is great.
2 minutes. Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. Sorry about that.
Oi.
Posted it online and in newspapers. Then we held real interviews.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Have you ever done one of these interviews over the camera before?
No.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the job to get started with. It's not just a job, it's sort of probably the most important job. The title that we have going right now is Director of Operations, but it's really kind of so much more than that. Responsibilities and requirements are really quite extensive. First category for the requirements would be mobility. This job requires that you must be able to work standing up most or really all of the time, constantly on your feet, constantly bending over, constantly exerting yourself, a high level of stamina.
Okay.
That's a lot. For how many hours?
135 hours to unlimited hours a week. It's basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I'm sure you'll have a chance from time to time to maybe just sit down here and there, yeah?
You mean like a break?
Yeah.
No, there are no breaks available.
Is that even legal?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So like no lunch?
You can have lunch, but only when the associate is done eating their lunch.
I think that's a little intense.
No,
not possible.
That's crazy.
Now, this position requires excellent negotiation and interpersonal skill. We're really looking for someone that might have a degree in medicine, in finance, and the culinary arts. You must be able to wear several hats. Associate needs constant attention. Sometimes they have to stay up with an associate throughout the night. Being able to work in a chaotic environment, if you had a life, we'd ask you to sort of give that life up. No vacations. In fact, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and holidays, the workload is gonna go up, and we demand that, with a happy disposition.
That's almost cruel. That's almost a very, very sick, twisted joke.
But when there's time to sleep or...
Oh, no time to sleep.
Yeah, all-encompassing almost.
That's exactly right.
365 days a year?
Yes.
No, that's inhumane.
That's very insane.
The meaningful connections that you make and the feeling that you get from really helping your associate are immeasurable. Also, let's cover the salary. The position is going to pay absolutely nothing.
Excuse me?
No. Nobody's doing that for free.
Yeah, pro bono, completely for free.
No.
What if I told you there's someone that actually currently holds this position right now? Billions of people, actually.
Who?
Moms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moms.
That's awesome.
Oh,
And they meet every requirement, don't
wow.
Oh my God. Moms are the best.
Yeah, there's no pay. They're 24 hours. They're always there.
Now I'm thinking about my mom.
they? Yeah, and what are you thinking about her?
I'm thinking about all those nights and everything.
Thank you so much for everything you do. I know it doesn't seem like I appreciate all of it, but I definitely do.
So, Mom, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done.
Yes, you guys get it. But I mean, the same could almost be said about teachers. I would love to see the companion piece. Right. The boo-boos and the teaching and the guiding and whatnot. And there's a lot there. So if it's that intense, mistakes will be made. Right? Mistakes will be made. And so it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, again, I hope you guys walk away with the fact that whatever you were raised in, you get to make choices. And sometimes those choices are easy. Sometimes those choices are not easy. But again, we all make our own mistakes, and hopefully we process through those with our kids and be present with them, because every culture has a culture inside that culture, right? Every house is its own culture. And so it doesn't matter if you say, I'm going to do it exactly like my parents and your partner's on board. There's going to be some differences. Again, kids are different. The society is different. Technology is different every 6 months. So again, mistakes will be made.
Yeah,
mistakes will be made. Good. All right. So 8:20, I think we're about.
Right. The one thing I wanted to just wind up with that is that in childhood disrupted, they talk about children whose parents, this is on page 129, it was just one of the most heartening things. So all these things that we screw up, we don't do right, it says children whose parents showed concern for their welfare and helped them learn how to cope with stress were healthier than other kids. In fact, a nurturing mother offset the metabolic consequences of childhood disadvantage.
Wow, yeah.
So when you think about the power of nurturing that I talk a lot about, is the power of one person to make a difference. A lot of times it's somebody in the family, but when you have a dysfunctional family and it isn't that person, it can be the teacher. It can be, maybe it's somebody, a friend or whatever, but it's somebody who can be that nurturing person in a child's life. That's the difference. And Dr. Perry talks about it a lot, that power of one person to make a difference in a child's life is so critical to their development. And so it's just being, it's so healing.
Yeah, just that pivotal person. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing, because as teachers, you can be that. Right. And you have the opportunity to be that to multiple. This is not a numbers game, but if you take that moment and really connect and see past the behavior, see past the bad behavior, see past the tattered clothes, and connect to that piece back there, that makes all the difference. All the difference.
Okay, so if you have any questions, I got all caught up with all the grading in our class.
Thank you.
Except for I think this week. So I think we're all, as far as I know, we are all caught up.
Beautiful.
So I was very excited about that, and working on 112, and
Beautiful.
So
lovely to see you ladies, and this is like a nice group.
Yes, thank you for
Hannah, you have a question?
Yeah. Oh, you have to unmute.
You're on mute.
Oh,
sorry, I have two things.
Yeah.
So kind of, this is going back to last week's, how we talked about that little spot of emotion and feelings, that book set that you showed us. Actually on Instagram, not a pop-up, but like an ad came up for like an educator's guide to that whole thing. So I'm going to put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
It's like just like a digital format kind of thing, but I think it's for all of the books.
That's amazing.
So that was the first thing. And I think it's on sale for like $25 right now, which yeah, exactly.
I think that little one, I think that little box set, maybe spent 30, but yeah. Oh, this is
Um,
fantastic.
and then my second was a question. For the assignment, the comparison assignment, are we just researching the second one, or would you like us to like find a family and interview and get like a first person perspective situation, or like what are you looking for in that sense?
I think I like to give students a lot of freedom. And so however you think would be, you would get the most meaning out of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that make it too hard? Does that make it harder or easier?
Honestly, easier for me.
Good. I don't
I
know. Some people react differently to that.
yeah, I mean, I would
That's
find
one of
it more meaningful. Like I would be able to get more out of it if I was able to like actually talk to someone and get their opinions and
sure,
like experiences, I guess,
yeah,
compared to just like
because you may
sitting and
that's the
reading
thing.
off
You
of a
may not
computer
feel
kind of thing.
comfortable like self-disclosing, which is perfect. Yeah, and that's it. So it's fine. It doesn't have to be about you. It's really about your culture. So I should probably make sure that I make that clear that this isn't, you know, you don't have to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really important piece, I think.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
We can add that. We can add that little as like a bullet or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
I'll definitely make sure we do that. And I realized you got two kind of like written assignment things right in a row. And I was like, oh crud, that didn't work out well. And I apologize for that. But we will slow it down a little bit after this. We will definitely be kind of going after that. We'll design a quiet space. We'll really be working on our self-care plans. And we're going to have a movie night. And so the movie is Resilience. It's over an hour, but I can't tell you how much over an hour. And we could do it. I just don't know how to. We could watch it together as a class meeting, but then it would go longer in terms of talking about it, maybe. Or maybe it's better to have you watch it, make notes, and then we come back together and talk about it.
That might be.
How is it available for streaming? Like what's the?
It's actually, I petitioned the library to purchase the rights to it. So it's through our library that we can actually get it. So it's free.
Yeah, and it just takes a student login, like your regular login.
Right.
Your
right. So it's just gonna take a student login to get to it. And that's it. So I'll set that all up.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think definitely we could talk about it, give people time to decompress and then come back the following week.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking, because it's just going to be too much, especially if the film is anything over an hour. It's going to take some time to like really sink in. It fits in a lot with the Harvard series. Jack Shonkoff's in it. Nadine Burke-Harris is in it. There's some very, very leaders in the field of resilience and trauma are in there, and it's really
very good.
It's really a very, very good movie about that. So that's how we're going to kick off our resilience section, is by watching that. So I'll just assign that during the week. And I was wondering if.
What about assigning it? I mean, we don't assign work over spring break, but if we gave them more time.
Well, that's what I was thinking about doing, is just releasing it before spring break.
What do you guys?
And just having that. And I'm also, I mean, I'll talk to you afterwards about another idea about resilience.
Sure.
I'll talk to you right after we're done, and we'll talk about that. But other than that, yeah, all right.
Last thing,
is our spring break?
Real quick, there's just a reminder on the journals. You guys are doing great on it, and we really appreciate like your honesty and just the self-exploration and being able to share your pieces in there. We just want to make sure that you guys are always doing your self-care practices, and if you're ever feeling unsafe, just reach out to us, and if you're feeling extra super unsafe, just please use your resources, even if it's 911. So the journals can be very intense, and we want to honor that space for you, but we also want to make sure that you're safe.
And I really want to thank you for your questions. And I know I've written some very lengthy responses to questions, and I appreciate having that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Something that maybe students don't feel comfortable asking in class. Or here, or maybe bringing up in a discussion board. It's been good to be able to point people to resources that might be specific to their needs. So I appreciate that.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful journey we're all on. Love it.
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah. Love our time together.
So, yeah, I really do. I look forward to Wednesday nights. And so just a little bit. So the evaluation piece, Dr. Lamarelle left a while ago.
Yeah,
and
she was maybe in for 10 minutes.
10 minutes at the most.
She was eating and had her camera off.
Yeah,
right,
yeah, absolutely. And then she texted me, she said, my grandson's here, I gotta go. Like, bye.
Okay, yeah, like she's really worried about me. It's me who's getting evaluated. But just the piece of it is that I just want to make sure students fill out the evaluation when that comes out.
Right.
It'll come out about they say about week 10 of the semester. We're 2 weeks behind them, which means it'll probably come out in about week 8. So probably after spring break, sometime after that, you'll get it. And please,
it's just a web link type situation. So
yeah, it's just a web link to fill out fill in the dots. And
it's 100% anonymous. You can be 100%, say whatever you need.
I can't grow as an instructor if I don't have some goals to shoot for.
Correct.
So I always look at that, look at it that way. All feedback is good feedback.
Very good. Yeah. So thank you all.
And I know I suck at grading, but I'm so proud of myself.
No, actually, you're pretty amazing at it. My other stuff is really behind, but you're really good about it, and I appreciate your leadership.
I got off on a slow start this semester, but we're fine. We're hitting our stride. We talked, Marianne and I talked about. We're really hitting our stride with this kind of experimental class and figuring out where it goes. And we're like right in there now. We really kind of.
When we do stuff and who does what, and we're trying, it's all kind of coming together real nice. So we appreciate your experimental ride with us.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information. We're just trying to make sure that it's not an overwhelm. We're trying to make sure that it's like well organized and well presented. That's our goal for sure.
Right.
So let us know if there's any other thing that pops up or is not working or is working or whatever.
Appreciate your comments and your questions and texts and all that. Love them. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Let us know. We'll see you next week, but let us know if there's anything you need.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.